Hello and welcome to the Soul Sync podcast. I'm Jason Paul. Welcome to my forest. It's lovely to have you here. Thanks for stopping by. If you're a regular listener, welcome back. You've trodden these roads before. Now, in this episode today, this week's episode for you, I have got a returning guest. And when I went to even come to pick his background music, this just felt to me, I felt like Spirit called it out to me that this is the right music, because I know Adam Berry firstly because he does a beautiful, and his name is Adam Berry, by the way. Let me just start with that. His name is Adam Berry. He's been on the podcast before, twice, I believe, and you're probably thinking, Jason, why are you bringing him back? Honestly, there's more to be had. I tell you that now. So Adam is really well known for Sitting in the Power. It's on Mondays online, 7 o'clock, every single week. He's a warrior committed to that cause. And I absolutely love his Sitting in the Powers. Now, quite a few of you have asked recently, I've had some emails asking me, how do I sit in the power? What is it? Do you know what? It's one of those things you've just got to experience, because what your power feels like, you should know what it feels like because it's within you. It's always been in you. It was your goddamn birthright. So it's just a case of practicing. And Adam Berry is someone who hosts the most soulful and lovely Sitting in the Powers, much to music, kind of like this, really. So what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be talking about the power in more detail. You're going to keep hearing it about the power. If you're new to the power, where have you been? It's always been in you, that's the thing. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about Adam's unique way of teaching. He is very simple. I say simple. He's very simple but grounded. And he does give heart-led explanations of spiritual concepts. And if you're new to really trying to understand how to access guides, your kind of higher consciousness or whatever it might be, it all starts with sitting in the power. It's getting to know your power. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, if you do want to get involved in the conversation, I do encourage this on the Soul Sync, because I'll talk about whatever you want me to talk about. But it makes it much more fun if you tell me. So you can always drop me an email. The email address is always in the podcast description. I do encourage you also, if you want to have a look at my YouTube channel. There's not much on there at the moment, but I'm going to be releasing some new mediumship videos very soon. Anyway, this is my conversation with the lovely Adam Berry, and it's titled The Power That Awakens Us. You're going to enjoy this conversation. We also talk about ADHD in a lot of detail. So anyway, without further ado, here is my conversation with Adam Berry. So, Adam Berry, welcome to the Soul Sync podcast. It's great to have you here.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be back, Jason.
It is. You are a frequent visitor, and we love that here. And I know many people love that here. It's great to have you back. And I'm going to say from the get-go, if you want to delve into, Adam's story in more detail, you can go back to the Adam of maybe 2.5 years ago and listen to him back at the beginning. So, Adam, in brief, for people that don't know you, tell us about you and, I guess, what you do in terms of spiritual stuff. That was the worst introduction ever, wasn't it? Because you're a medium, you're a healer, you came into this through a quite unusual route as well. But tell us a bit about you for people who don't know you.
Yeah, so I am a medium, spiritualist medium, healer, and public speaker, which leads me into more recently becoming a celebrant for a funeral celebrant and wedding celebrant. So I did my first wedding a couple of months ago now. But everything feels sort of sacred and joined together on this pathway. So I've been working in construction for 22 years. It was last year that I've actually hung my construction boots up and decided to go onto the more spiritual pathway of my work. So I do readings, work at churches, demonstrations, teach. There's just a whole manner of things that I
Strings to
do.
your bow, one might say. Strings to your bow. So I came across you. You're a very. It feels like a very long time ago, but you are one of the most beautiful souls. You're a what lovely, lovely, lovely medium, and such a kind person. And speaking of your kindness, you do, and how you're always only ever, 1 week's thought away from me, because every Monday at 7 o'clock England time, you do sitting in the power, and I want to talk about that. Firstly, what's happening energetically when people come together at Monday at 7 p.m.?
Energetically. In well, what's happening is people are coming basically for themselves. They're coming to discover what sitting in the power is, or they're actually doing that discipline that we're always told that we need to do to emphasize and improve our mediumship. Something I used to always feel guilty about not doing enough,
Oh
and
God, me too. Me too.
spent years searching for. And so when people come together on a Monday, which it's wonderful because it's been going for the last 6 years, and now we have between like 40 and 50 people that come on a Monday. So it's, you have the hardcore sitting in the power people that are there week in, week out. You'll have people that'll catch it up on the recording. And we also have the new people that come in. But collectively, how I sort of describe it is that people come in for that individual purpose of unfolding, discovering, and remembering, because it's about remembering the power. The power is God, the universe, the creator, however you perceive it to be. And it's always present, always available. But within our everyday lives, we just get distracted. We're firefighting things that are in front of us. And we have a material and emotional life as well that we need to fulfill. So it's with those sorts of trials and tribulations and normal things that we have in our everyday life, it's not easy for everybody to just say, I'm going to sit in the power. So I present this on a Monday, so I'm always there, whether there's one person there, I'm there on my own, or there's however many people there, I'm there. And it's providing that service to people, because I believe that the more that people remember that divine beauty within them, is the more that they unfold, awaken their soul's potential, and whatever their potential is, which it's not always necessarily platform mediumship or private sittings. It can be to become a compassionate human being. It can be to emphasize the healing qualities, the healing power, bringing the confidence into their life about their actual abilities and what they were born to do. And during that time, there can be inspiration that can manifest itself within that person, that individual, or nothing could happen.
Hmm.
But there's sat within that power in that peace. And the intention of that then is that because they've connected or remembered, I keep sort of correcting myself with that, with connected, because we're always connected, but we so have these habits of these certain words that we use. And I feel like I'm unlearning those sorts of things, because it's like
Mm.
we're always connected. So it's just remembering and it's being aware of it. So
Mm.
when
Isn't
people, oh, sorry.
Sorry, go on, go on.
So I was just saying, so when people may have, I say, all the answers to all your, all the questions, all the answers to all your questions are in that moment. And because within that moment brings the clarity, you bring in the potential for clarity, for the inspiration, that divine knowledge. And it may not present itself in that 30 minutes sitting in the power session, but I'm positive it will present itself at some point when it's needed, because the intelligence of your soul, of the spirit world, of that divine knows. And I just believe that we have to touch in, we have to just remember at certain points in the day, just even by the breath, we can just remember that we are this divine being. And it's having that appreciation and gratitude and just acknowledging it. And I just believe it strengthens our sensitivity. It strengthens our very being in many ways. So whatever is your focus at that time, it will present itself in that way. So I know myself, just by hosting Sitting in the Power, myself, that I've evolved with my spiritual work, coming from being a healer to demonstrating mediumship to being a teacher, then going back to healing in a deeper way, but also creativity, poetry, singing, creating songs, music, all these different things that I never would have dreamed of going back probably 4 years ago, and it's just how things can shift and change because our soul is ever changing. It's not static. And it has to go in line when we're ready, when our conscious mind allows us to move forward, because our conscious mind will be the clutterer and the barrier.
Oh, the conscious mind, it's a bloody nightmare, the ego. Just shut up, I think to myself sometimes when I'm sitting there trying to quiet my mind. Why are you thinking again? I think, do you know what? My relationship, and the reason we talk so much about sitting on the power in this podcast is because, Adam, you make a very good point. We are connecting to something we are already connected to. We're not, having to fish out the telephone number from our back pocket to dial it in and, get a connection. But sitting in do you know what? It took me so long to even work out what the bloody power was. I'm sitting there for a long time trying to work out where the switch was. And I understand it now. But the biggest problem I have when it comes to sitting in the power and what's held me up is trying to sit in the power, trying to build the power, trying to strengthen my aura and push it out. And even I've realized when I get a bit of evidence in my mediumship, the first thing I do is it goes up to my head and I go, and I don't even realize I'm doing it. And sometimes I'll sit there trying to sit in the power, here we go, trying to raise my energy, wondering why the hell I'm not feeling anything. How, very simply, if someone wants to sit and work out what their power is, what should they do? I'm asking an impossible question. I'm just thinking we all go on this journey and it takes so long to even work out what it feels like.
Yeah, and I think as well it's something along the lines of so obviously, like I said, when I first was introduced to Sitting in the Power, it was with Glyn Edwards, and he was the person in my opinion about sitting in the power and having his CD and actually going through
Oh, that's a really good CD, that CD, I have to say.
It is. And it's something that, at that time in my life, I was ready to be open to it, but I wasn't ready to accept it in some way. So I just feel like there's a process within your life, your personal development, your spirituality, your spiritual unfoldment, that there comes a time where you just accept it and you surrender to it. And when I've said about me doing the class and session of Sitting in the Power, so I've done like a presentation of Sitting in the Power because I wanted people to see it visually, how I was seeing it and how I was understanding it, because I'm a visual learner. And it's sometimes when someone's describing something in words, you're creating a picture that may not be what's trying to be presented by the person that's saying it. So having analogies about things, simple analogies, and saying what the power isn't as well, to know what the power is. That's a thing. So when we talk about God, we've said this before on the previous podcast, but some people have a problem with the word God. So
I had a problem with it for a long time, and I think we said that before.
Yeah,
I think I've only recently come to be at one with God, if I can say that.
yeah. Well, that's because you've experienced the power. So when you've experienced the power, and I've said this because it's on one of them bite-sized things that you've done before on the video, where once you've experienced the power and the blissfulness, the relationship, or you've experienced the divine in a way that you can't explain it, but there's a knowing, then it doesn't matter what it's called then. But what can happen is to reach that place, or to be in the awareness of that place, is that word God can be that barrier for a lot of people, because they see God as the damning man with the beard in the clouds chucking thunderbolts at people that have done things wrong. And when people have had that sort of history or that conditioning, then how can they experience something so loving from that conditioning of something that is so, I don't know, I can't find the word, damning?
Do you know what? I do agree, and it can be anything that blocks that, because I guess it can be the word God, but for me, at the beginning, I'd used to go on. So like I've said this about a bazillion times. Obviously, my granddad was a medium, but I was very interested in the spirit world, and what I was really seeking in my 20s to keep going on these all-night ghost hunts, where effectively I would go to a place of paranormal activity through this company, where we turn up at 9 o'clock, me and my mum, with our torches and our woolly hats, and then we go ghost hunting looking for spirits. And then I think that when I started sitting in the power, I would every now and then feel a sensation, and I'd go, oh God, is that a good spirit, is it a bad spirit, and I'd sit there and I'd light me odd number of candles and do me all that kind of stuff. And for me, it was like the connotation that there was bad spirits was stopping me a long time from getting that. So it can be anything, can't it, that can block that, and that's the ego.
Yeah, it's the fear. So if there's something that's fear-based, then it will be a barrier. So it will be a barrier if people have that. So like the fear of like a bad spirit is like, well, it'll be a fear of all spirits, because, when something, especially if you're in a paranormal investigation and the lights are all off and
and the table's tilting and there's banging. Well, the last one I did, Adam, I did it. This is funny. I actually did it in a Shepton Mallet prison where the Cray brothers were, and they took us to the hanging room and stuff. So I did that. That was my last experience prior to sitting in the power. So it was hardly surprising.
Well, that's it. It's fueled some kind of fear or thought in your mind about something that's bad that's happened there. So you're gonna be expecting that. It's like when you watch a horror film, and you're expecting when something, as soon as the young girl always runs upstairs instead of out the back door. It's like something's going to happen, and that anxiety kicks in, which will start getting your mind to go on overload. And having a psychic power too can sort of influence that energy. I'm not saying I don't believe in bad spirits, if I'm honest. So I don't believe.
No, I don't now.
I used to.
I used to have,
yeah. So I used to, until I understood the sort of the process of it, and knowing, because there's a saying of like looking for the normal before the paranormal, and understanding that, and understanding the psychology of things, and if people think in that way, then that way will happen in some ways. And I'm not saying that there's a separate entity that will be involved in that, but it can be the psychic power that can influence that. So it's like the thought of negativity. So the negativity can produce negative things in the mind. If we have a negative mindset, then our lives can be or will be negative in some ways.
Oh, hello, dear listener. It's me, Jason Paul, and I want to welcome you to my Christmas grotto. Honestly, half the elves are on strike, the wrapping paper has run out, half the fairy lights have blown, the cat's eaten the tinsel, and even the QR codes for the naughty list have stopped working. Honestly, festive joy everywhere you look. I've had enough of it, I tell you. Meanwhile, I'm here trying to record episodes, edit intros, and not accidentally superglue my fingers to a gift tag. Santa does one night of work, and I've been in this for weeks. Now, I've just taken what we call a fag break, just for 5 minutes. I've told the elves, but I need to step away. I'm struggling to even keep a serious face in this, but I've got essentially a Christmas competition for you. Now, I'm giving away my top 5 spiritual books. Most of them, well, so quite a few of them are about mediumship, but I don't want to spoil the Christmas surprise. Where is the fun in that? So, I'm going to give away not the originals because I love them, and you wouldn't want them anyway because the corners are all bent and they look horrible. There's highlights all over them. So I will be sending you brand new copies, but books that have genuinely shaped my spiritual journey and I refer to all the time. So to enter, it's really simple. All you need to do is leave a podcast review on Apple or Spotify. So just leave a review on Apple or Spotify. One review, very simply, is one entry into Santa's magical draw. The winner will be announced on the Christmas Day episode, which I'll probably be recording whilst solely on mince pies and driving the ship here at the Christmas HQ on Blind Faith. So I will announce the winner, leave a review on Apple or Spotify. It helps other people to find the show, and it will get you off my naughty list if I could get the QR code working. Well, I think it goes back to something I talked about a couple of weeks ago on this podcast, which is, are your thoughts fear-based or are they love-based? And, most of us live in a state of fear. And I was probably living in a state of fear for a good 12 months over the last year. And I didn't even realize I was in a state of fear. It was only when I became really conscious of, am I thinking love or fear? But that kind of led me to that. So with the power, this power that is available, that is limitless in its potential, has led you on to a path recently of healing. So I want to talk about this unlimited power that's available to us all then, and your experiences of that.
Okay, so I came into this sort of movement when I first went into a spiritualist church. I became a healer because people were saying, "Oh, you're a healer," so I become a healer. So every time there was a service, every Thursday night, I'd be healing, and there'd be like a queue of old ladies waiting to be healed, and I loved it. I loved that, the essence of healing. It was something that just really sat right with me. And then obviously I went on then to learn more about mediumship and sitting for that. I did learn about Reiki as well, so there was another aspect of healing there. So I always feel like the foundation of my spirit work is healing, and even mediumship is the healing between two worlds. It's all healing, but just in different sorts of intentions and different ways. But just sort of recently, I have been invited to Finland next year. It's in February, and they would like me to do healing, which I've never taught healing before. And I thought that's really interesting.
Finland, of all places. How beautiful.
Yeah. So I've been to Finland before, and I've done inspiration and mediumship kind of teaching there. But I'm actually going to do healing, which since that time, things have been happening where healing has been concerned. And like I do one-to-one tutoring, and a really profound experience happened during that. And this was basically me taking that person into the power, which became a very profound healing experience. So much so that I've now started to offer services on my website, online healing. because it's just changed this perception of, not that I don't think it's effective over Zoom, because obviously we can do absent healing, and it's something that's very much that we know that works as well, the absent healing. But something that's changed within me and my thought process of healing is that I used to sit and send healing.
That's what I do, Adam.
Yeah, and it's nothing that there's nothing wrong with that, because it's part of the absent healing. But I think it's just the process of it, and me understanding the power more from my own perspective. And I'll say it's my own opinion, my own perspective, because other people will have different views. But I just feel so passionate now about, and it is sitting in the power, where for people to become aware of that power, because once they're aware of the power, it allows the soul to awaken, it allows the miracles of healing to take place. And all of the healing does take place within that power. So what we're doing really is, we're sending that intention of a thought, but our intention of a thought is for that person who is in need to be aware of it, to be aware, to be ignited in their thought and be inspired, to be aware of the healing that is available to them. Just for that moment, there could be this epiphany of, and just in that moment can be such a healing experience. So it's for those people that are in need the most. May we send our intentions for them to be aware of it, so it generates their own healing. So,
What made your perspective shift? Because that sounds like it's quite a big shift.
It is a big shift, because, and I think it goes back to some of the things that have happened as well, and sort of like when you revisit things, like my friend Alan, he was a lovely guy, one of my best friends, and he had emphysema, and he was really poorly with it. And I just remember like text messaging with him, and he just says, "Oh, I'm not feeling too great, Adam." And I just says, "Oh, I'll send you healing," in a text message. And obviously I'd just had this moment, and just like my thoughts were with him. And then he phoned me up frantically saying, "What is it you've just done? What have you just done?" I said, "Well, I've just thought about you and healing, because you need it." He said, "Well, whatever it is you're doing, keep doing it," because his breathlessness had gone. And it was just in that moment. And I thought, do you know what? That isn't me. That wasn't me. That was him. That was him being aware in that moment, because having that message gave him a belief in that moment for him to be aware of the power of healing. And
because he opened to it, he's then drawing on the power.
Yeah. That's my thought process behind it, and all these different things that have sort of transpired along the way.
It makes total sense, because, I suppose, if you want to help someone in your life that perhaps, is even in a negative place in their life or whatever, the first stage to healing someone is to make them aware, probably, of the needful change or what's available to them, tackling the problem, I guess, at source.
Yeah.
So that does make sense. It's funny how you get these sort of moments along the journey. Like, lots of dots have joined up for me recently on things, and I've started to. What's really funny is when I listened back to an old episode of me at 18 months ago, and I think to myself, my God, I think I've progressed slowly in some ways. And I listen back to the Jason of 2 years ago with so many questions, a million whys. I've still got a million whys, but I'm a little bit more knowledgeable these days. But, I don't think you're ever going to know anything. No one's going to know everything. And if you're seeking to know everything, then you probably got the wrong outlook on things. So I agree.
But that's the thing. So what I believe in today, I mean, change my mind tomorrow with something else that presents itself. And I think that's the openness of how we evolve, because I feel like there's an evolution in my thought process and how I feel about things, and being open to that change. Whereas some people are quite rigid in this and won't think out of side of the box because it is like this, because it's always been like this and it doesn't change and you can't change these things. But
Yeah.
you know, there is a different understanding, and just I think it is like an accumulation of things. And I don't know whether I discussed with you Kenneth Hartley in the previous.
I don't think you have. The name doesn't ring a bell.
No, so Kenneth Hartley is another sort of story where I was part of an awareness class. I think I was 23. I was 23 at the time. And I wasn't in a very good place emotionally in a relationship. It was quite a controlling relationship, and it just wasn't the right relationship. However, we was in this awareness class, and the teacher wanted to take us to this guy who's like a spiritual guru, and he lived in Burnley, and we'd go to his house on this Saturday, and it was like a Saturday afternoon. So there's about 7 or 8 of us that had gone from the class, that we all sat in this awareness group at the local church. So it's a bit like of a road trip going out, a spiritual road trip. And when I got in there, it was just like this guy who was this old guy with a beard, sat in a chair. And I just thought, you know, what's going on here? I was only 23, and I'm quite new to all this. And I'm like thinking, what's going on here? And our teacher's going, now you can ask him anything spiritual, ask him anything that you want spiritual. And it's like,
sounds like you've been taken to the person on the Matrix, that lady who knows everything by Morpheus or something.
The Oracle.
Yeah, the Oracle. That was it, the Oracle.
Yeah.
Where would you start as a young 23-year-old?
Well,
what was your first question, I even want to know?
Well, I didn't have any questions, because I was like really quiet. I didn't say anything. I just went along with it. I was opinionless, but I had all these thoughts in my mind. Because when people did ask questions, it'd like start coming out with like speaking in a Texas dialect. And I'm thinking, this is just weird. He's like he's a weird old man. I don't know what I'm doing here, and just need to just get through this. But he had some really interesting stories, and one of them I'll say to you, because it always stuck in my mind, and it was his thought process. And the reason why is so impactful is that his passion was about the spirit. His passion was about the divine, the spirit world. He was just an incredible man that I didn't realize back then, and I was very, very, very privileged to be in his company. But what he would do, he was talking about, he would go into churches, like in the Catholic nature, like, or Christian, he'd go into churches, and he'd shout, all priests should go to hell. And it's like, and we're like looking at him, and he says, and you know what? They chucked me out of that church. They chucked me out of churches, and they don't listen. They don't ask me why. Why would you say that? And I think he said, ask me why. Ask me why. And it was like, because that's where the people need the help the most. In their version of a hell, in the faith, is where the people need the most help. So why wouldn't those people of faith go and help those people that need the help the most? And logically, it's like, yeah, I get that from that perspective. That makes sense. So that was something that got me thinking in a philosophical way about how it was kind of funny. But I never said a word whilst I was there. And what happened was, I was late home. I was an hour late home, and I just got into trouble with who I was with at the time. And just to cut a long story short, something just happened where I can't lie. I just can't lie. And I was actually, my partner at the time was saying, oh, well, what we're going to do, what you're doing tonight? And I says, I've already got plans. I didn't have plans. and all this, and I was going all fuzzy because I was like lying, thinking, why am I talking like this? And I just ended up saying it's over. This relationship was over, and this observation of my mind was thinking, why am I doing this? And you know what? It was over at that point. And then as the weeks went on, I went into work and I says, I think I should be paid this much. And they're saying, Adam, what's happened to you? And I'm like, nothing. And I just started to have, I'd always in my life had this feeling of, if anything good was happening, there's always something around the corner to dash it, and that was my thought process. So I could never, now I know, really, I could never enjoy the present moment because there was
You're
always
always
something
fearing
to
what's
dash
around
it.
the corner next. Yeah.
Yeah. Which was like a conditioning in my mind. And so my life just changed. It's as if like I can do anything I want. It was like, and then obviously I went to the Arthur Findlay College, and it's like this new life had began. Fast forward a few years, which was probably about maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I was at a Mind, Body and Spirit fair, and there were these ladies that I know, and they was talking about this guy called Kenneth, and they were talking about how they would go to his home on a Saturday afternoon, like it was open. It was like an open house, and they says, yeah, and some people said that just by being in his presence, he had like the Jesus effect. Sorry, people's lives changed just by being in his presence. He had the Jesus effect. And I'm like, oh my God, that was the day that I went, and that's the day that my life changed. And that is an example as well of that, of someone that I hadn't gone for healing. I hadn't gone there for healing.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't gone there I didn't know what I'd gone there for, if I'm honest, but it was part of our outing as a spiritual road trip with our teacher. But what I realized was that the essence of this man, Kenneth Hartley, and his spirituality, which he oozed in essence, his belief, his faith, his knowing was incredible. And you couldn't help but feel that would have moved everybody in that room. That presence would have moved everybody, and that presence moved me, and it moved me into a place of living my life, basically. And I didn't even go there to ask for that. I didn't ask for healing. I didn't, you know. I believe that something happened in that space of where I was saying about my friend, where that text message had gone, and in that moment in time, something has happened to spiritualize me or move me, whatever you want to call it, and it changed my life. And I now believe and know that people can do that. We are all capable of doing that.
I've come to the conclusion now that we are capable of doing absolutely anything as a human being. One of the first ever episodes I did on this podcast was with a guy called Simon Duran, and he came on and he was telling me that he went and saw a Chinese witch doctor, and that he was essentially I think he was a scientist at a top university like Cambridge, and he dedicated his whole life to what people could do with with their mind, essentially bending metal. He was telling me about someone in China had been basically locked in a custody cell naked. He did reassure me that he'd paid him to do that, but then he told me that he teleported banknotes. And I've heard of stories of people pulling crystals from the air, and I think that you can do, it's all the ego. If you truly know that you are God and have that access of power, I do believe what you can do is limitless. And even I've started that book recently, A Course in Miracles, and that is have you read that book?
I've not read that. I know about it. I've seen sort of like quotations from it.
Yeah, it's your work, as a very wise friend of mine keeps telling me, it isn't really a book. It's more of a sort of course you do for forever, and you know it because it's one of those books when you pick it up, it's got like paper thin Bible type pages, so you just know this is a serious book. I want to ask you then, because we do share a commonality in that I got diagnosed with ADHD about 3 years ago. And actually, it was even longer than that. It must have been about 5 years ago. But then I was diagnosed with it, and the journey to get treatment was a very long and protracted one because of the fact that I'd had psychosis in the past. And it was only when a trial came up about a year ago where it was specifically for people with psychosis, because lots of doctors are scared to even think about prescribing a medication to someone with that history, that this trial came around. Then I started it, and at the time, it was really funny because I thought, oh God, when I was considering going on the trial, I thought, oh, it would be really good to ask someone for advice on this. And then it was only months later where it jumped into my mind, Adam, why did I not reach out to you? So my experiences are when I started taking it, and the reason I want to talk about this today is because of mediumship and especially meditation. One of the biggest problems I ever had, it was just trying to quiet my mind. I'd sort of lived my life in a way whereby I was always told things at school, you're disruptive, you're always swinging on your chair and all these things. But I kind of used ADHD is definitely my superpower. It's my superpower, but it can also be a thing that trips me up. But when it came to my mediumship, like even if I was to do a course in mediumship or whatever, I would find the days exhausting. They would like absolutely wipe me out. So once I started the medication, I found that very quickly, not only was I able to meditate easier, but kind of weird in a way, because what I'm taking essentially is an amphetamine. But obviously, people with ADHD, what they suffer from is a lack of dopamine. But and it's kind of crazy, really, because I'm taking an amphetamine, but it's actually making me feel calm, which is what it does. So I wanted to ask what your experiences have been since prior, and how that has, I guess, affected, your life and your mediumship, if it has.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I didn't know I had ADHD. So it's something. So when I was at school, my sort of backstory and something that I've said in interviews like this before on podcasts is that I myself, and it's in my Soul Rise book as well, being dyslexic. So, and I was basically a self-diagnosed dyslexic because when I was at college, it was only picked up at college that there was that the teacher came up to me and was sort of like, you answer questions so well in class, but when you're trying to write them down, or you've got a question on paper, it's not how we want it answering. So they sent me for a dyslexic test, but at that time I was sort of going through the drinking phase, the drinking problem that I had, and that was sort of building up, and I was becoming less interested. So anything that was hard, I'd become less interested in. So it was all inconclusive, but because it had been picked out, I thought, well, it makes sense because I failed I tried so hard at school, failed my exams. I passed the more practical sort of exams that I was doing rather than academic, which was all sort of like leading into dyslexia. However, when it must have been about 2021, I started to read some things about ADHD, and I would never have put myself in that bracket because I wasn't a kid that was sort of like in trouble or, disruptive.
You don't strike me as that. I think we probably had very opposite school reports, I imagine, madam.
Yeah. So I was very quiet, very passive, inattentive, and that was it. It's inattentive. So I'm like reading things and I'm thinking, I tick every box to this, and I never would have thought. And I actually started to go for psychotherapy. I booked in to have some psychotherapy because I wanted to explore this. So it was like I want to know more about this, and I want to know more about myself. So I'm not bothered if I am ADHD, but I'd like to understand it more. And then what happened was, and I don't know whether you was aware, I went for an MRI scan.
No.
I went for an MRI scan as part of it was a study on mediumship. So it was at King's College,
Oh, how
and it
interesting.
was just one of those things that was meant to be. I got the very last session. There's quite a few people, quite a few mediums that went and did this study as well, that went down there, and it was to differentiate imagination and mediumship. So you would have these tests within the MRI scan, and they would show you visions of things, and then you'd have to imagine things, and then you'd have to connect with the spirit world. So it was looking at your brain waves to see how your brain was functioning within that. So it was very interesting. It was a very
Well,
interesting.
did you get the result? Because that's absolutely fascinating.
Well, the results of it already. I've been in touch with the lady that did it, and she did it for a PhD. But she said that we'd get something like halfway through, but we never got anything on that interim. But I know that she's completed it. I need to chase her up again to see, because I think it is in the public domain now, because she's completed a PhD. She's moving on to something else now. But what happened was, when I had that test, I had the shock of my life in the January, because that was the December. In the January, I get a phone call from my doctors, and they basically said, you've had this MRI scan. And I thought they were wondering why I've had this MRI scan, because you have to fill out all these forms and stuff to go to your doctors and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, it's a study. I was going on a study. I'm thinking, she doesn't understand why I've gone on it.
I can imagine you trying to explain that to the doctor. It was a study at King's College where I had to go in an MRI and connect to the spirit. Where, yeah, Adam, are you okay today?
I know, it's like, really, like, I don't really know how to explain this, but and what happened then was, she basically said to me, they found some abnormalities with your brain, with
God.
the front left superior gyrus of the brain, which I didn't have a clue what that was. So when she's telling me this, so she says, so what are your symptoms? I says, I don't even know what that is. I didn't even know anything was wrong with my
Your heart's
brain.
probably in your stomach by this point,
Yeah.
thinking, what on earth is wrong with me?
Yeah. And obviously, like with ADHD, working memory is a terrible thing. And I said, well, recently my memory's not been very good, but I'm putting it down to stress of things that's going on. So then I was referred to a neurologist and all this. So I've had to have all these different MRI scans, and I've been monitored now for this whatever it is. They still don't know what it is. It's something that's so small in that area, but it's not cancerous. They said it was a tumor at one point, which scared me to death, and it's not even that. But they've monitored it. There's no change in it. There's nothing there. But interestingly, when I was looking at that, as we do, like front left superior gyrus, what is this? Anything that's like, it can affect, be a symptom of ADHD. It's the place of cognitive function. It's in that area. So I'm thinking, right, I really need to go for a test. I really need to explore this ADHD now, because I've got something that's scientifically there. I've been feeling this. I end up writing a 7-page letter to my doctor, and I wrote that, put it in on this particular day, and then on that evening, the Panorama thing came on about ADHD, and I'm thinking,
Oh, yes.
they're going to think I've just jumped on a bandwagon now for this. So I'm thinking all these things, but it made complete sense to me in a lot of ways, of the anxiety, the constant anxiety that I've felt. The I was successful in the things that I did, but it's the perfectionism in what I'm doing.
Mm.
And I overcompensated a lot of things by giving myself a good structure. Like with one of the common things, because these are things where people say with ADHD, oh, I lose my phone all the time, I lose my keys and all that sort of stuff. But I don't, because I overcompensate. I'm so worried about losing
Mm.
things. I put them in a place where I always know they'll be.
See, what you're doing there on that point, because that's an interesting point. I used to be in my 20s a nightmare. I'd lose my bank card every other week, my keys, my phone. But what happened was I learned from that and learned that I need super organization. So in my house now, everything has a place where it lives, even my diary. But even when I was growing my business, and I was in the early days of it, I used to say to myself, oh God, I've created a monster. It's growing out of control. But I would start a million things, not be able to finish them. But what I learned to do was I learned all these ways to plug the things that I'm not good at. So I would employ a person that does the detail and this and that. And I found ways to cope with it. But
Yeah.
as soon as I started that medication, it completely started making me reflect. And it made me reflect because my mind used to be like a supercomputer of anxiety. And I didn't even realize sometimes I'd sort of have something going on at work and I'd be thinking about, like, this solution, this solution, this solution, like just firing them off. And as soon as I took that medication, it made me think, my God, I need to give that guy of the past that some love here, because for him to have got where he's got to, because I'd never known any other way of being until
No.
I started it.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So,
where the medication's concerned, because obviously it's quite a long process. I've got friends. You realise your friends are
yes.
a similar thinking to yourself as well in one way or another, and you sort of like be drawn to those people, and it makes me laugh. But I was sort of like resistant to medication at first because of my addiction
Yeah.
past. I was sort of like very, very wary. So I came into that very aware of, let's see how this goes, and I've just got to be really, 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 really careful. But what I have found with it, when I first took the medication, it was like I just can't explain it, but it was as if like I had this eternal knot in my stomach. If I was to put it like that, this eternal knot in my stomach, and this knot had gone, and it's like, whoa. And then it's like, I was saying to Sean, my husband, like, I think I need to journal this, because I really need to journal my experience. And I got the journal, and it had like a piece of cellophane over it. And as I'm opening it, I'm thinking, my God, I'm so present. I'm so present. And I can hear like the crinkling and I'm thinking, this is just bizarre. Like, because I was so used to having 100 things going on in my mind that I'd just not experienced that being fully present in doing something. And there's that aspect of being hyper focused, but this was different. It was like, and I'd been to the gym, so and I remember coming home, getting out the car, and as I got out the car, I could hear the birds. I could hear the birds, and I'm like, and it's not that you don't hear obviously you know what birds sound like, but it was like, gosh, it was like, because usually my mind would be thinking, what am I doing next? What am I doing next? What am I doing next? As I go into the house, what am I doing next? And it's constantly thinking of the next thing to do. So, and I've always been like that within creativity. The only time I've been able to sort of relax is to write a poem, or to, that's my relaxation.
So you're always busy like me, even when my relaxing at the moment, it's like painting. I'm really into that at the moment. And
Yeah.
but I'm always doing something. Very rarely am I sitting down. Do you know what's so funny? I got a sofa when I first moved into this house about 6 years ago. I got it in a John Lewis sale, a leather sofa. And honestly, it looks like it's never been sat on. My mum sits on it. It's still like it was in the showroom. I said, it's because I've never sat down. I'm just
Yeah,
never,
yeah,
I'm always up doing something.
yeah. But I mean, that's it's a bit of the medication for me, how it helped me was I was in a state because I'd left construction and I'd left the routine that I had, and everyone was saying, Adam, your world's your oyster now. You can do whatever you want. And I was paralyzed in thought of not being able to start anything. I just couldn't move, and it was really getting me down because I just couldn't prioritize things. And I think that's where the symptoms of ADHD really, really presented themselves because I was dis so distracted, and I felt like I was in this pit of I want to do really want to do so, and what's wrong with me? I feel so, you know, it's not that I'm not motivated. I just couldn't understand what was going on with me, and I sort of
Mm.
realized now this is what was happening to me as a teenager. No, these are the thoughts, and I was self-medicating with alcohol, and alcohol is the primary sort of drug, I suppose, because it is a drug of where ADHD are sort of like influenced towards, because it brings
Mm.
that false sense of confidence and that dopamine sort of hit. So it's easy for people to like that too much.
Do you know what other thing we've gone on off on such an ADHD tangent, but I'm glad we have because I think it's relevant to a lot of people right now. One thing I noticed as well, and it was only when I saw a BBC program. I don't think it's the one you mentioned on Panorama. I think it was Inside Our ADHD Mind, and then they did Inside Our Autism Mind. Such an interesting 3-part series. But one of the things they said, and I didn't even realize I did this, it's called masking, which
Mm.
I think is really prevalent in autism,
Yeah.
whereby, people will learn this set way that they should be in society that is
Yeah.
deemed normal
Yeah.
because, being ultra sensitive and being autistic, it has a lot of kind of, I feel like I want to say symptoms, but not really symptoms, just kind of traits people have and the way they perceive the world. But I didn't
Yeah.
realize that that's why I used to feel so exhausted because I was always in a state of nodding at the right time, pretending that I'm paying attention. But then that's where I tended to find that my friends tended to be, like you said, people with ADHD because they would keep my attention. So I found that I was ever in a perpetual state of masking. But I also realized because I do recruitment as the day job that I'd become so good at masking that actually what I was doing in a sales perspective was actually mirroring, which is a
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
powerful sales
It is. Yeah.
technique.
Yeah.
But I didn't even realize that was a thing. And
Yeah.
then I realized recently when I do it and when I don't do it, but actually what the medication has made me do is just stop really doing it anyway, because now I don't need to because I can pay more attention anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And,
No, it does.
I think some people don't realize that actually it's bloody exhausting, if you've got
Mm.
ADHD and just even trying to pay attention for a short amount of time. Adam Berry, our time is drawing to close. I could just talk to. I've got such a long list of things here I wanted to talk to you about. What,
Yeah.
what final kind of topic for Pearl of Wisdom would you like to leave me and the beautiful listeners of Soul Sync with
Mm.
today?
I don't know. I feel on the spot now.
I can ask you another question. I can ask you perhaps I tell you what I want to ask you as a final question. I'll ask you this. How does one know from your perspective if their soul has been awakened?
Oh, that is a good question because I think there's different shifts in different parts of your life because there's significant things. I mean, I can only know and understand from my experience where had an awakening. I had an awakening where I stopped drinking, and it was a spiritual experience that stopped me from drinking in one way or another, or has strengthened my stance in not drinking, that there's more to life than the life I had. That wasn't living. So that was like a spiritual awakening, because I remember hearing a voice, whether it's my own soul or whether it was the spirit world, I still don't know. I just remember hearing, why do you continue to keep doing this when you know you're going to have to stop? So why don't you just stop? And I chucked the bottle away. It was, so that was something, and I still don't know at that time. I just know I listened. So I think there's different stages of awareness and awakening. Just even in later life, from that awakening, then that was so prevalent for me to go onto the spiritual pathway, to learn more, to guide me to the Arthur Findlay College, to guide me to Mavis Patilla. That was the awakening of my soul. But then we still have those discoveries as we're going along, because there's still all these surprises.
Indeed,
we're still growing all the time, where we have this so unique pathway of the soul that we're discovering, that can probably go into different directions, but it's wherever we're allowing ourselves to lead that way. And going back to the addictions, is when someone's just focused on that addiction pathway, that's the pathway that they're going down, which, until there's that awakening, the true pathway may or may not present itself, depending on the actions of the conscious mind and the person, because there's a choice there. And I believe that there's many pathways that we can go, and it's all about understanding the awakening of it. And I like to see them as like a serendipity, a synchronicity, an epiphany, and we all feel those things. I was just talking to a student today that just yesterday, they felt like all their life became meaningful in this one moment. Like everything that they'd done in their life was about this one moment that they were, and there was at work, and it was just like this awakening, and things have started to change within their life as well, where they were feeling stuck, and things are starting to change. But it's this feeling of oneness in a moment that is like, yeah, that's the reason why I'm here. This is my purpose. It might change in 2 weeks, but in that moment, you get that feeling that you can always hold on to. And I think it's those moments that we look back on to know that how far we've come, and and that there is that potential of that happening again in another way, at another stage of your life, whether it's understanding an aspect of your mediumship, or whether it's understanding an aspect of humanity, that about in a compassionate way. I think we're all in a way of realizing that sometimes the way that we think about things and have thought all our lives has the potential to change, and that can be the epiphany of what propels you forward and more awakenings.
It's interesting. I think that the word I was picking up on there was kind of alignment. And actually, I had a moment recently where I got this terrible, I said terrible, it was like deja vu, where suddenly it just made sense on why I had to go through what I had to go through to be where I am. And it felt like almost like, I guess it felt like an awakening. It did. And I keep getting a lot of coincidences and just signs recently. I got so many signs to restart this podcast. I'd say it was more like a slap round the face by the end of it.
Yeah.
Adam, thank you so much for coming on to the Soul Sync again. It's lovely to spend time with you, and I'm sure everyone's enjoyed this as much as I have.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And I just wanted to add as well that I have had a dyslexic test this week.
Yes.
And I have got dyslexia. So it is something that goes hand in hand sometimes with ADHD. It's all part of being neurodiverse or neurospicy, as people are tending to call it, aren't they? But yeah, it just explains a lot. And for me, it's been something that has helped, as it does help people, because they understand more about themselves and the struggle that we can have in this world. Never mind everything else that's going on, but when your own mind's processing things and or not, it's a lead to more self-discovery and epiphanies. So
It is indeed. It is indeed. You want to find out more about Adam, you can just go to the show description where all his details will be there. Adam, thank you so much for coming on to the Soul Sync podcast.
thank you very much, Jason.